A tense Senate hearing erupted when Senator Patty Murray challenged FBI Director Kash Patel over immigration enforcement, FBI priorities, and allegations about his leadership of the Bureau. Murray accused the FBI of diverting resources away from fighting crime, while Patel defended the Bureau's record and pointed to major increases in arrests, child protection operations, and violent crime enforcement. Watch the full exchange first, then we'll break down the facts, the competing claims, and what this debate reveals about the FBI's priorities under the Trump administration.
I want to start by recognizing important work by the FBI to crack down on fraud. In one case, the FBI helped bring justice multiple former business owners who orchestrated a $205 million Medicare fraud scheme on the American people. And those business owners filed nearly 1 million false claims for services that they never provided to any patients, literally stealing from American taxpayers and preying on vulnerable people who were suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and substance abuse. But thanks to the FBI, those crooks were held accountable. So I just wanted to ask you today if you would pass along my gratitude to those FBI agents for their tireless work bringing those criminals to justice.
I will, ma'am. The fraud work is often overlooked, and I greatly appreciate that.
And very important. But I do have to say, unfortunately, President Trump, the guy who says he's going after fraud, granted this man, Lawrence Duran, clemency last June. He was set free and let off the hook for the $87 million he owed in restitution. And Trump granted clemency to Duran's business partner last February, cutting well short her 35-year prison term. He literally undid the important justice work the FBI served and let fraudsters off the hook, and I find that deeply disturbing. With that, I want to say, I want to take a moment to reiterate the important role of DOJ law enforcement in keeping all of us safe. Those agents and deputy marshals are absolutely critical to making sure public safety and solving crime. But I worry that instead of pursuing these child abusers or terrorists or drug traffickers or other criminals, you have our agents spending time carrying out Stephen Miller's mass deportation agenda and harassing families and children. I want to ask you, Director Patel, how many FBI agents have been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement?
No one at the FBI has been reassigned to work solely on immigration, ma'am.
Well, I would differ with you because according to the Cato Institute, more than 2,000 FBI agents were reassigned to work on immigration enforcement in 2025. By the way, it's not just the FBI. More than 2,000 agents from the DEA, more than 600 from the Marshals Service, and more than 1,000 ATF agents are spending their time on immigration enforcement. That has really pulled critical, highly trained assets off of work to keep our communities safe from drugs and guns and other threats, and I find that deeply disturbing. Now, Director Patel, I want to ask you about a number of extremely troubling stories recently about your leadership and temperament and what's happened to the FBI with you at the top. And in response to all the concerns about your leadership, instead of righting the ship, you've taken to polygraphing your employees to scare them and attempt to rat out leakers. There are reports that you're using FBI resources to investigate journalists for reporting what's going on, and that is absolutely not what this committee intended when we funded the Bureau. So can you commit to this committee today that no agent hours have been pulled from other work like counterterrorism or violent crime investigations to work on matters related to negative press about you or your personal lawsuit?
Senator, I greatly appreciate the question, and I can tell you unequivocally, this FBI is targeting and investigating no journalists. This FBI is targeting no journalists. The Obama and Biden administrations targeted dozens of journalists, sent out 1,200 interviews.
I didn't ask you about the Biden administration. I asked if you can commit to this committee that no agent hours have been pulled from other work.
We have not done so.
Okay, well, there are reports that are using FBI resources to investigate journalists. You are saying to this committee today that that is not true.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, well, let me just say, Director Patel, we need a serious budget, but we also need serious leadership. And I will say this, there's one clear priority in Trump's overall budget, and it isn't law and order, it is war. Because while Trump is proposing cuts to programs that really do keep people safe, he wants to increase war spending by $500 billion. And I don't need to tell anyone here we are not going to bomb our way to safer communities. So I intend to help rip that budget up and write bills that keep families safe. But beyond that budget, we need serious leadership at the FBI that the American people can trust. And I am deeply concerned about the reports that your leadership has not been serious. We need somebody at this agency who's focused on solving criminal cases, not passing out branded bourbon or jetting around the globe. Your job is to be reachable. And I know Senator Van Hollen asked you about this, but I gotta say, if you want to pass out liquor or pop bottles in a locker room, stick to podcasting, leave law and order to people who really do care about justice and appearances. That is really critical, and it's what I am really deeply concerned about, and so are many people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I respond? This is what real leadership looks like at the FBI. Every one of you was given it. This is what's happened under my tenure at the FBI and the Trump administration. 20-point drop in the homicide rate, 45,000 violent offenders arrested last year, twice as many as 2024, 2,450 criminal gangs disrupted, that's a 322% increase from 2024, 6,900 child victims have been located since I've been in the seat, that's a 144% increase, 2,900 child predators and human traffickers arrested, that's a 70% increase, and we've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months, that's twice as many in the 4 years combined. That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond to the
Senator Murray.
I appreciate the work of our FBI agents, but leadership, serious leadership, is a concern. And we are seeing the pictures of passing out branded bourbon and what happened at the Olympics and jetting around the globe and all the rest of it. And that, I will say again, Mr. Chairman, is of deep concern to me. Thank you.
This hearing exchange was ultimately about two competing visions of what the FBI should prioritize and how federal law enforcement resources should be used. Senator Patty Murray began by highlighting an example of successful FBI work involving a Medicare fraud scheme. This was not accidental. By opening with praise for agents who investigated healthcare fraud, Murray established that her criticism was not directed at rank-and-file FBI personnel. Instead, she drew a distinction between the work performed by agents and the decisions being made by FBI leadership. That distinction became the foundation of her argument throughout the hearing. Murray's central concern was resource allocation. Her argument was that highly trained federal agents are a limited resource. Every hour spent on one mission is an hour not spent on another. In her view, assigning significant numbers of federal agents to immigration enforcement could potentially reduce the FBI's capacity to investigate violent crime, financial fraud, organized crime, cyber threats, drug trafficking, terrorism, and child exploitation. This debate is not unique to this administration. Every administration faces difficult decisions about how to allocate law enforcement resources. The question is not whether immigration laws should be enforced. The question is how much of the federal law enforcement apparatus should be devoted to that mission compared to other public safety priorities. Murray cited reports suggesting that thousands of federal agents from multiple agencies had been redirected toward immigration-related operations. She argued that this shift may have come at the expense of other critical public safety functions. Patel rejected that characterization. He stated that no FBI agents had been reassigned solely to immigration enforcement. That distinction is important because it highlights how different parties can frame the same issue differently. One side may focus on whether agents are spending substantial time supporting immigration operations, while the other side may focus on whether agents have been formally and permanently reassigned. The hearing therefore reflected not only a disagreement over policy but also a disagreement over definitions and metrics. The discussion then shifted toward allegations regarding FBI leadership and management practices. Murray referenced reports that FBI employees had been subjected to polygraph examinations in efforts to identify leaks. She also referenced media reports suggesting that investigative resources may have been used to examine issues connected to press coverage of Patel and the Bureau. These allegations raise broader questions about transparency, internal accountability, and the relationship between government agencies and the press. Supporters of leak investigations argue that unauthorized disclosures can compromise investigations, reveal sensitive information, damage national security, and undermine public trust in institutions. Critics argue that aggressive efforts to identify leaks can create a chilling effect inside government agencies and potentially discourage whistleblowers from exposing misconduct. This tension has existed across multiple administrations and is not limited to any one political party. Patel directly rejected Murray's allegations. He stated that the FBI was not targeting journalists and denied claims that investigative resources were being diverted toward personal matters. That exchange highlighted one of the recurring challenges of congressional oversight hearings. Members often rely on reporting, whistleblower accounts, or outside information to raise concerns, while agency leaders frequently dispute those characterizations. As a result, hearings sometimes become contests over competing narratives rather than venues where disputes are immediately resolved. The most dramatic moment of the hearing came near the conclusion. After Murray criticized Patel's leadership style and referenced reports involving public appearances, travel, and branding controversies, Patel responded with a detailed list of performance statistics. This was a deliberate rhetorical strategy. Rather than focusing on personal criticism, Patel redirected attention toward measurable outcomes. He cited reductions in homicide rates, increases in arrests of violent offenders, disruptions of criminal gangs, rescues of child victims, arrests of child predators, and captures of fugitives. Whether viewers agree with Patel or Murray, this response shifted the conversation from perception to performance. That distinction matters because public officials are often evaluated on two separate dimensions. The first is leadership style. The second is operational results. A leader may face criticism regarding public appearances, communications, management decisions, or political controversies. At the same time, supporters may point to measurable outcomes and argue that those results are what ultimately matter. Critics, however, may argue that leadership style and organizational culture directly influence long-term effectiveness and public confidence. This hearing reflected that broader debate. Another notable aspect of the exchange was the discussion of clemency decisions. Murray referenced individuals convicted of major fraud offenses who later received clemency from President Trump. She argued that granting clemency to people convicted of significant financial crimes undermined the work performed by investigators and prosecutors. This criticism touches on a long-standing constitutional power. The presidential pardon and clemency authority is intentionally broad. Every president has used it in controversial ways at different times. Supporters often view clemency as an important safeguard against excessive punishment or unfair outcomes. Critics often argue that clemency can weaken accountability when applied to individuals convicted of serious crimes. The hearing did not resolve that debate, but it highlighted how presidential decisions can affect perceptions of law enforcement efforts. The broader policy issue underlying this entire exchange is the role of the FBI itself. Historically, the FBI has had a wide range of responsibilities, including counterterrorism, counterintelligence, public corruption investigations, organized crime enforcement, cybercrime investigations, civil rights enforcement, violent crime investigations, financial crimes, and child exploitation cases. Because the Bureau's mission is so broad, debates about priorities are inevitable. Every administration places emphasis on different threats. Some prioritize terrorism. Some emphasize organized crime. Others focus on cybersecurity, public corruption, drug trafficking, gang violence, or immigration-related crimes. The challenge for any FBI director is balancing these competing demands while maintaining public confidence in the Bureau's independence. That challenge has become increasingly difficult in a politically polarized environment. Public trust in federal institutions often varies dramatically depending on political affiliation. Actions that one group views as necessary enforcement may be viewed by another group as political overreach. As a result, FBI directors frequently face criticism from multiple directions simultaneously. What made this hearing noteworthy was that both participants framed their arguments around public safety. Murray argued that public safety requires focusing resources on traditional law enforcement missions and maintaining strong institutional leadership. Patel argued that public safety is demonstrated through arrests, prosecutions, rescued victims, and measurable enforcement outcomes. Both sides claimed they were defending effective law enforcement. The disagreement was over how effectiveness should be measured. Should leadership be judged primarily by management practices, public conduct, and institutional credibility? Or should leadership be judged primarily by operational statistics and enforcement results? That question remains at the heart of this debate. For viewers watching this exchange, the most important takeaway may not be the personal criticism or political rhetoric. Instead, it is the broader discussion about priorities. Federal law enforcement agencies have finite personnel, finite budgets, and finite time. Decisions about where those resources are directed affect every aspect of public safety. Whether one agrees more with Murray's concerns or Patel's defense, the hearing underscored a fundamental reality. The priorities chosen by federal law enforcement leaders shape how agencies operate, what crimes receive attention, and how government resources are ultimately used to protect the public. That is why hearings like this matter. They are not simply political arguments. They are debates about how one of the most powerful law enforcement institutions in the world should define its mission and measure its success.